Okay, good day, grade 8. I hope you're doing well. This is your first video for this term. I've asked you guys to please summarize term 3's work from your textbook. So I hope you've done that, and now I can just explain to you. Maybe there was something that you didn't completely understand. So this term we are dealing with comedy, tragedy, musicals, and puppet shows. So we're just going to do an overview of each one of these. They are pretty straightforward, so you shouldn't be confused about it. Just know the content, know what each one of them are, and what makes them unique. Okay, so let's start with comedy. So you can think by yourself which comedic actor you find very funny. Someone that I personally like, is Trevor Noah. And then we have Jim Carrey, we have Adam Sandler, yeah, we have Mr. Bean, and maybe there's a few others that you can think about. That Kevin Hart, maybe, that you find funny. He's a recent comedic actor, came onto the scene recently, so maybe there's one of them that you really find funny. So South Africans in general like to do comedy. If you think about South African movies and plays that have been put up, South Africans like the comedic setup. I think Trevor Noah was one of the first people in South Africa who really delved deep into comedy and made comedy a bit more exciting and a bit more credible in South Africa, because you also get some people who do comedic acting, but it actually degrades the whole genre. Whereas if you are a good comedic actor, you can be both serious and comical at the same time. So in South Africa, we have a little saying that says, if you can't laugh about it, then what can you do about it? Okay, so certain very serious events that have happened in South Africa, people often make fun of to deal with the hardship of the whole situation. And sometimes that's a good way to just look past it and to not be so negative. If you think about something like load shedding, after the first week that load shedding hit us, which was quite a profound event in South Africa, people already started making jokes about it. Now, I do agree that some jokes may be distasteful when it comes to serious events, but you know what? To just deal with the whole emotional part behind issues, it's sometimes good to just laugh about it. That is the way that we as South Africans deal with some problems, and to just stay sane is we make jokes about things that might be a little bit close to home for us, but that helps us cope with it. So comedy is something that South Africa really incorporates in their everyday. So, comedic acting for me is one of the most difficult genres. For some people, they'll say no, it is easier. It's easier to make people laugh than to make them cry. But for me personally, I think comedic acting is very difficult. The technique behind comedic acting is actually quite specific, and you need comical timing. For example, you need to know how to read your audience, how to get them to laugh. Um, Especially some people, you will find, never find anything funny, so it's very difficult to get through to them to actually make them laugh. So here is a few things that you can use to enhance your comedic performance. So firstly, make your acting style very big. So this means over exaggerated acting. So comic acting is usually very over dramatic, big acting. So your body language, your facial expression, everything needs to be very animated and very big. if you think about an actor like, for example, Mr. Bean, who is an iconic comedic actor, his facial expression and his body language is so big and so profound that often that's what makes you laugh and not necessarily what he's saying or doing. Thinking about someone like Kevin Hart, his face can literally tell stories by just looking at his facial expression. It's very big, very over dramatic. It's not an inward emotional feeling of what they're trying to express. It's very outward, very, as I said, animated movements and an acting style. So then it says make your facial expression very expressive. So that goes hand in hand with the style that is very big. Style is very big, the voice is very big, the facial expression is very big, very dramatic, very animated, as well as your body movements itself. So literally all three of these can be characterized very well by, for example, Mr. Bean. If you just look at the way in which he acts, you can literally find the things that you need to be a comedic actor. But as I said, sometimes comedic actors can seem a little bit over the top, and very often, for example, Emmy Awards aren't really ever won by comedic actors. Um, you won't find the best actor being a comedic actor. They're normally tragic actors, actors that play in dramas and so on, because they're not taken seriously. But this has changed over the years. Comedy has evolved into something that is not necessarily just an animated, stupid thing that you laugh at. Because sometimes we laugh at comedy because it's stupid, not because it is really funny. So there's certain techniques that you can use that work for that comedic effect that you want. So the first one is a double take. So this is very difficult, but it does work when you get it right. So it's that type of acting where the actor looks to the audience, looks away, and then looks to the audience again. It's almost like a meme type of um, acting. So you once again you actually laugh at the animated unrealistic approach more than what the actor is saying. So you do that double take, or sometimes they do it to another character, so it's not necessarily the audience but another character. Another one is falling. So this is something that we classify under slapstick comedy. So you get these funniest home videos. Suzelle, who's also one of the comedic actors in South Africa, she has the show on Comedy Central where just for laughs of LOL or whatever the case may be, there's a lot of those shows where people actually laugh at other people getting hurt. So that is an innate thing that people, for some reason, do. We think that people getting hurt, people falling, is funny. So any type of event where you hurt yourself or fall, especially children find that very funny. Then ear pulling and hair pulling, all of that part of slapstick comedy. It's part of the. I think it's more you feeling uncomfortable because the person is getting hurt than you actually laughing because the person is getting hurt. We get that uncomfortable laugh where you actually go and you get like a fright because this person is getting hurt. So especially for children, pulling hair, um, pulling an ear, stuff like that seems to be funny. Okay, then the next one is tragedy. Now, a tragedy is quite the opposite of a comedy. Tragedy acting is very deep in although it is also big because any stage acting is very big and over dramatic for the audience to read it. Um, it's a different kind of big. It's more an inward feeling where a comedy is an outward feeling. So inward, you would have to feel sad in order for you to portray that you are sad. Whereas with comedy, you don't have to feel funny to be funny. Often when you feel funny, you are not funny. So it's quite different type of acting. Back in the day, tragedy was a very serious, very profound acting style. Only the most trained actors were tragic actors, whereas comedy actors could more or less be anyone. So things like plays like Macbeth, Hamlet, um, if you think about modern day plays or maybe movies, is something like I Am Legend. It's also a very tragic movie. Often in a tragedy, someone dies. So you can see in this picture, it's always someone who's dying, and it's very tragic, very emotional when we go through the acting style. So say, um, sorry about that. Okay. I'm not going to go back to the previous slide because otherwise my slides are going to get messed up. But it dealt with facts about tragedy. Now, facts about tragedy. The first one is that long ago, only profound actors, as I said, actors that meant something, people who were an influence, could play in tragedies. That was, for example, kings, lords, gods. They were the main characters in tragedy. Anyone could play in comedy, but tragedy, the main actor was someone important. Modern day, they don't care so much about that, but as I say, you will never win an award or hardly ever win an award when you play in a comedy, but you will win an award when playing in a tragedy. So it is more profound actors who do tragedy than it is comedy. The main actor normally dies at the end of a tragedy. So, for example, if you think about Romeo and Juliet, where both of them die in the end, if you think about something like Titanic, where he actually dies in the end of the movie, Titanic, also a very profound, tragic movie. So, yes, there's normally someone who passes away. Then, tips for acting in a tragedy. You use memory acting. That is why I said you must feel sad in order to portray sad. So often you have to delve deep and think about a situation that you were in when you felt very sad, whatever day it is, and then delve into that emotion in order for you to then feel sad. So it's almost like you are really sad. That's why you're portraying sad. Then, when we think about projection, especially in stage acting, so now you want to feel this inner sadness that you have inside of you, but you must still project and let out the emotion, and that's sometimes difficult because when I am sad, I'm not saying, "Oh, I am so sad because my dog has passed away." It's not something that you will project like that. When we are sad, it's almost like we can't speak. Our voices get lost. I don't know if this has ever happened to you and you're trying to tell someone what is wrong with you, and then it's like your voice disappears because of the emotion that you're feeling. But we must be conscious about that on stage to allow ourselves to project and not to keep that voice inward. Okay, then crying. So I always urge people to stay away from crying acting on stage because especially in a tragedy, it can seem comical. As soon as someone puts on that crying voice, that crying action, it comes across as comical rather than tragic. So it's something that you really have to practice. And once again, you have to feel. It's almost like you must really cry in order to cry convincingly on stage. It's a very difficult um, technique is crying. Then, so when you do cry, so something to use is your breath. So as I say, often when you tell a sad story and you start crying in the middle of your story, your voice fades away, and that is because of the way in which you breathe. So if you think about feeling anxious, what is your breath like when you are feeling anxious? You get that hasty breath where you can't even speak. It's that type of breath that you are taking. So thinking about crying, your breath is more or less the same. You have short, very abrupt breathing, and that often helps you to get that sense of how to portray crying. Okay. And then lastly, as I said, feel the emotion. So tragedy, most important thing is it comes from inward. So you must inwardly feel that you're sad to portray sad. Comic is not like that. You have an outward performance. So we get inward performance and outward performance. Inward performance, you perform with real emotion. Outward performance is you put on a performance outward to get a reaction from the audience. Okay. Then we get to musical theatre. So, yeah, I've just put down some of the most profound musical theatre pieces that have recently come up. The first one there is School of Rock. Someone might have seen that. Then we have Cats, which is now a new musical that they're putting into the movie. Serafina, that you guys are familiar with. You always ask me if you can perform that. Annie, and then obviously High School Musical, one that all of you know about. So, what makes musical theatre musical theatre? Musical theatre uses music to tell a part of the story. So, it's not just music used in a story, because, like all Disney films, use music for emotion, use music for certain actions that you want to portray and so on. That is not a musical theatre piece. A musical theatre piece is distinguished by telling a part of the story using music. So if you think about something like High School Musical, the part where Gabriella moves away from Troy and she wants to now go somewhere else. She doesn't want to deal with him anymore. She sings about her emotions and tells the story in that part, telling that she wants to let him go. Okay. So it's a part of the story that is told by the singing. If you think about something like Mamma Mia as well, which is a recent musical theatre piece as well, that was put into a movie, certain pieces of the story is told by the singing, by the music. So often they'll sing what they would have said. That is musical theatre. Okay. Then lastly, we have puppet shows. So puppet shows is a very fun and unique way to communicate with children and to tell a story to children, because they can envision the characters that you have put up on stage. But most recently, puppet shows have not just been a genre that is used for children, but also for adults. Puppetry has really developed over the years. If you think about something like Lion King and Warhorse, which were theatre pieces that were recently performed, they actually used these huge puppets where they would have normally used costume on stage, an actor wearing a costume. They now use puppets to tell these very serious stories. So it's really developed over the years. The different types of puppets that we get. So we get a string puppet that is like Pinocchio. If you think about Pinocchio, it's the wooden dolls with the strings that their arms and their legs and their heads can move. glove puppet. So that is normally in primary school, you make those little sock puppets where you put the sock over and you talk. That's a glove puppet. Finger puppets are those little round thing that you put over your fingers. That is normally used in primary school to tell a story. Shadow puppets, also something that has developed over the years and not necessarily used for children, but it is a very big ancient uh, Chinese way of telling stories is through shadow puppets. I will put a video onto Google Classroom that shows you a shadow puppet performance. Very interesting, very dramatic, very nice to actually watch. So you have figurines that are put in front of a light and a screen, and so these figurines tell the story. So there is sound, there is people who talk, but you only see the shadows of the characters who are busy performing, and it's actually amazing to see. It's really a nice art form, is shadow puppets. And then lastly, paper cut out puppets. So that is little paper dolls that are cut out and you use them as characters to tell a story. Okay, so guys, really this part of drama is really not difficult, but it is an important part. You have to know these basic things in order for you to understand more um, serious and more developed concepts. So please master this. Make sure you know the content. Make sure you are familiar with all of these so that when I put up the assignment as well, you are clear on what I expect from you, because obviously it will come out of this content. Cool. If there's any questions about today's slideshow, please feel free to comment on Google Classroom or to just WhatsApp me and ask me what you really don't understand. Thank you very much for listening and have a good day, guys. Bye.